We were talking about teacher effectiveness and so forth. One major part of this, or what people perceive to be a major part of this education agenda, is collective bargaining. You know, even under current statute, it limits to wage and wage-related benefits, but what we're seeing are a lot of other things that have entered into contract negotiations. Tell us a little about your thinking around this particular issue and why it's important to help move this education agenda forward.
Well, of course, there are a lot of people who think that it should play no part at all, and that those who run the schools ought to be free to do that and be accountable for that. That's not the position we've taken. We've suggested preserving collective bargaining, but narrowing it, as you said, to wages and the benefits. There's an awful lot in contracts all over Indiana that makes it difficult or impossible for principals, superintendents, school boards to really manage the schools and try to lead them in the direction of improvement. I heard the other day that a clause that's not uncommon is that one that prohibits a principal from entering the classroom to observe the teacher. How are you going to assess that teacher fairly and know if he or she is doing a good job if you, by contract, aren't really allowed to be there to form a judgment? So we think this is a very moderate suggestion. It would leave the law in Indiana much more liberal about collective bargaining than it is in many, many states. And to me, it's one of the more moderate suggestions that we've made across the whole improvement package.
From your perspective, obviously, with the General Assembly and a number of issues that have happened, education has become a centerpiece of a state debate, which I think is a healthy thing.
Right.
And people are talking about it. From your perspective, what are the most important pieces that we have to get done to improve the outcomes that you're talking about, to make Indiana and put Indiana where you believe we need to be?
First of all, it's central in the debate on purpose. It was central in my State of the State speech. Yes. It was central in the arguments we made in the campaign that preceded it. And there's just nothing more important. Vince, many of your viewers, most of them will have no way of knowing this, but Indiana today is #1 in America in the percent of the state budget spent on K-12 education. It's over 50% of every state tax dollar collected goes to K-12. We're way ahead of whoever's in second place. So along with public safety, this is the most important thing we do, and it ought to be in the center of debate. The most important thing in the package in terms of outcomes to me is teacher quality and getting to meaningful assessment. The best teachers get paid more and placed in the most important positions. Teachers who aren't cutting it have to be moved on to some other walk of life. But I do want to say, we believe that the entire package fits together. Each piece supports the other. So just to say that teacher quality is maybe the single most important outcome we're after does not mean that any of the others can be treated as incidental.
Yeah, it's a systemic approach.
It is.
All these things working together.
Yeah, a national education journalist asked me just today, they said, piece by piece, what you're suggesting is all very moderate. It's in the mainstream of education reform. Again, President Obama and people associated with him agree with almost all of it. They said what's different in Indiana is you are moving in a comprehensive way, and if you did succeed in making each of these improvements, you would go to the head of the class, and that's where we'd like to be.
Final question, and it really ties back to one of your previous responses around the investment Indiana is making and really the priority that you've established in education. You know, back in December of '09, we had a state budget cut, and obviously revenues were down. You know, and when I look across the country and this deep cuts to education, you've worked very hard to protect education in a meaningful way. And you know, talk to us just a moment about that overall fiscal piece of moving forward in education.
Yeah, hasn't been easy, and I understand that if you live in Indiana where we didn't go belly up and we didn't have huge service cutbacks and closing parks and grinding roads back to gravel and these other things, then you might say, gee, that was terrible. We had that 2% reduction after years of only increases in K-12. But for those of us whose jobs cause us to look around across the country, I mean, Indiana uniquely protected education, and we intend to continue doing that. We squeezed everything else so hard. Much of state government is down 25 to 30% from when we got here. That's why K-12 is now a higher percentage of the Indiana state budget than in any state in America, well over half of the entire budget. And that just reflects the priority we've put on it. Now, money is not the answer. If more money alone was going to produce world-class academic outcomes, we'd have gotten there a long time ago. But it's a part of it, and we're going to do all we can. This year, Pennsylvania is ready to take $1 billion out of K-12 education because they have no choice left. And this has happened in many other states. We're not going to let it happen here. But it can't be just about the money. We have to have these education reform measures to go with it. If we get it right on both ends, financial and a new structure of accountability, we'll have something to brag about.
Governor, thanks for your leadership and what you're doing for all Hoosiers.
Thanks for caring about our kids.